Want a big luxury SUV but don't need 7 seats? This new Mazda CX-70 could be the car for you. It's effectively the 7-seat CX-90, but with its third row of seats deleted. Same 6-cylinder engines, same lovely and premium cabin, but of course, a bigger boot and a much lower price as well. Australia is the only major market to take this car, as well as all 3 of its siblings, CX-60, 80, and 90. Is it a niche within a niche, or is this car worth considering? This video, we're going to take you through everything different on the outside compared to a CX-90, take you through the lovely interior finishes and all the tech you get in this car. Check out the boot, which is bigger than the CX-90 because of course there is no fold down third row. And of course, hit the road to find out just what it's like to drive. Let's get started. Now, if you're thinking this car looks pretty big for just a 5-seat vehicle, you'd be right, because this has the same body as well as all the same body panels as the normal 7-seat CX-90. The differences are really just the lack of that third row, as well as some minor styling changes around the car. For example, got a different front bumper with those black fake air intakes. They aren't actual rear air intakes. You can see they are just black plastic, but I guess it fits the sort of sporty vibe of this car. Different rear bumper as well, different 21-inch alloy wheels on this version here, as well as black door handles and black trim around the place on this GT version here in Australia. Now, we've got 2 models of this car in Australia, the GT as well as the Azami. Now, the base GT CX-70 is actually more expensive than the cheapest CX-90. That's because the base CX-90 is a lower specification grade. If you compare an equivalent CX-70 to a 90, this car is around about $10,000 cheaper, which is something worth considering for the lack of that second row. And it does make this car almost worthwhile in a way to some buyers if you really don't need that 7-seat layout. What do you think? Did Mazda go far enough with the design change to this car? Should it have had a completely different body to the CX-90, just like the CX-60 does to the CX-80? Let us know in the comments below. The Mazda CX-70 range starts from $75,970 before on-road costs for the GT petrol and spans up to $84,970 before on-road costs for the Azami diesel. Standard equipment in the GT includes 21-inch alloy wheels, adaptive LED headlights, black exterior trim, dual 12.3-inch interior screens, wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, a panoramic sunroof, heated power-adjustable front leather seats, and a full suite of advanced safety technology. The Azami adds black and silver 21-inch wheels, body-coloured exterior accents, black or burgundy Napa leather trim, ventilated front seats, lane centering assist, and other extras. The Azami is available with an optional SP package, adding tan Napa leather upholstery, a 2-tone steering wheel, and suede trim on the dashboard. Powering the CX-70 G50E is a 3.3-litre turbocharged inline 6-cylinder petrol engine, producing 254 kilowatts and 500 newton meters, while the D50E uses a 3.3-litre turbo inline 6 diesel with 187 kilowatts and 550 newton meters. Both are matched with an 8-speed multi-clutch automatic transmission, all-wheel drive, and a 48-volt mild hybrid system designed to trim fuel use. Brake tow ratings come in at 2,500 kilograms for the petrol and 2,000 kilograms for the diesel. If the CX-70 is a bit too expensive for you, there are plenty of new 5-seat family SUVs available for sale on Drive Marketplace, both new and used from trusted dealers around the country. Check it out now. Inside the CX-70, this car is fundamentally the same as the 90 in the cabin, which is no bad thing, I should add. You get all the same materials, all the same design, all the same tech as that car, which again is definitely not a bad thing. Some of the highlights, got dual 12.3-inch screens here for the infotainment screen as well as a digital instrument cluster. The infotainment screen has wireless Apple CarPlay, Android Auto, built-in sat-nav as well. It's a pretty good system, it's well featured. A lot of the controls do run through this dial, which some may like, others may not like. I know plenty of Mazda owners do swear by this dial design, however. Fortunately though, if you're not a fan of the dial, you can use CarPlay and Android Auto through the touchscreen while you're driving, which is really great to see. Instrument cluster ahead of me is not the most customizable, say compared to a Volkswagen or something like that. Still has all the information you need while you're driving, does have a choice of 2 different views, and the graphics are pretty contemporary and fitting for a car at this price. In terms of materials, this car is GT spec, so not the full top-of-the-line Azami, but you get some nice leather-like material on the dash, as well as some squidgy stuff up here. All the armrests are quite soft, the door tops are quite soft, it all feels very nice and expensive, which is for this price. However, a couple places that aren't as nice. I'm not a huge fan of this silver trim on the center console. Personal preference perhaps, and you do have these nice little knee rests, which are cool while you're driving and help, you know, lean your leg on in fast corners. And there's some scratchy plastics around the place, but overall, it is pretty nice. Great to see, you've got physical climate control buttons in this. There's no touch sensitive controls, which is really, really good. You've got dual zones up front, as well as a tri-zone, third zone, I should say, for the back seats as well. Yeah, physical control is really nice to see, as well as heated seats, heated steering wheel in this spec, And if you go to the top deck Azami, you can also get ventilated seats, which is great to see on Aussie summer days. Now, in terms of storage, it is a little bit limited, I have to say, in this car. You've got two cup holders there. And you do have a center console bin, but it is a bit small. It's quite shallow. The glove box is also not the largest, and these door bins are a little bit small for a car that's this big, which is a bit of a surprise. Not the end of the world, and you can learn to live with it, but still, yeah, could be better in that area. In terms of ports and amenities and things, you've got two USB-C ports in this center console, 12-volt socket here, wireless phone charger, obviously the climate control stuff I mentioned before. You get a panoramic roof as standard across the range, which is great to see, as well as various cameras, sensors, full surround view monitor, as well as front and rear parking sensors, all the thing you'd expect of a modern car in 2024. Now, some of the basics, love this steering wheel. It's two-tone, you can get it in the Azami with the SP package. These seats are quite comfy, they're trimmed in leather or Nappa leather, depending on the model you go for. Really comfortable, though, pretty supportive as well. But again, they're not full performance car seats. This isn't a performance car after all. Overall, love the cabin, really great to see. And yeah, it's like a CX-90, which is definitely no bad thing. Now, unsurprisingly, the CX-90 is a big car, so it makes sense that the back seats of the CX-70 are really, really roomy. As you can see, loads of knee room here to the front seat, great headroom as well, and plenty of toe room, even with this driver's seat set up for me. I'm 186 centimeters tall, or 6'1" if you prefer in the old measurement. Amenities are pretty good back here too. You've got two USB-C ports, another zone of climate control, as I mentioned before, as well as air vents up here too. Map pockets, door bins that are actually bigger in the back than the front, which is a bit of a surprise, as well as a fold-down center armrest with a pair of cup holders. Got all the usual ISOFIX points and child seat anchors, so ISOFIX on the outboard, as well as top tethers for all three seats in the back. And overall, yeah, it's a really nice and roomy space back here. Also worth calling out these rear sunshades, which are cool to see for a family-focused car. But yeah, unsurprisingly, it's roomy in the back here because it is a really big car on the outside. But of course, unlike a CX-90, you don't get a third row of seats behind me. Though these rear seats do slide, but most of the time you're just going to have them all the way back because there's no third row passengers to compromise back there. And of course, they recline as well with some levers on the side that you can pull and have a bit of a lounge-like experience in the back. Yeah, great rear seats. Let's check out the boot. If you wondered what pulling a third row out of a three-row SUV does to boot space, well, that's pretty clear. It's a massive area for all the luggage and pretty much anything you could throw at this car. Mazda claims 589 litres of boot space behind those rear seats up to the seat backs and more than 900 litres measured up to the roof. That's a massive space. After all, this is a pretty big car. Now, the advantage of getting rid of that third row, which normally folds into the floor, is great underfloor space. So you have the normal underfloor space here that you get in a CX-90 or other cars in Mazda's large platform range. But under where that third row would go is even more storage. Loads of room for storing things out of sight, whether it's, I don't know, dirty clothes, dirty shoes, stuff like that. When you're doing kind of adventurous things that Mazda thinks you'll want to do with a car like this. Now in the boot here, you got a power outlet as well for household power outlets, so plugging different electrical devices in, which is pretty cool. Also got a 12-volt socket, as well as some lights, some tie-down hooks around the place. Now you can fold down those second row seats with some buttons on the left-hand side. So you fold those down. Yeah, for even more room if you want to turn this into effectively a big Mazda SUV van. But yeah, really practical car, but I guess it kind of has to be because this is a car more than 5 meters long. Yeah, massive boot area, and this is one of the biggest trump cards of this new CX-70. All right, behind the wheel of the CX-70. Put our foot down in this petrol version. So it makes a lovely, creamy, almost a little bit BMW-like note. This is obviously an inline-six engine after all, which is something that company has made famous. You get a choice of petrol or diesel engines in this car, both turbocharged, and both are really, really good. This petrol engine is really smooth, really revvy. It wants to be driven quickly, and it's a really sporty engine. Makes a nice note as well, as you just heard. But I think the diesel is the better fit for this kind of car. Even though Mazda says more buyers it expects to go for the petrol in this 70 rather than the diesel, I think the diesel is a better fit for this. It's got that low down torque that we expect of a diesel engine. It's really lots of performance off idle, and yeah, just a really cruisy, laid back engine that I think fits the big, luxurious, insulated vibe of this car. Now, Mazda is a brand known for sportier handling, so this car does hold its own pretty well on a country road. I wouldn't say it's a sports car, after all. It does weigh 2.2 tons, and you can definitely feel that when you tip this car into a corner. It doesn't really feel nimble, and you can feel just how much mass and how big this car is on the road. But the steering is quite direct. It's a little bit heavy, which is a good thing. It's got some nice heft at higher speeds, but it isn't too heavy at low speeds to be cumbersome around town when you're parking, for example. And the body does stay pretty flat in corners. And yeah, overall, it's quite composed at high speeds and quite a nice car to drive in the country. However, there are a couple of caveats. First of those is the ride. Now, While it is composed at higher speeds, it is on the firm side of the spectrum, especially for a large SUV like this. We've been driving on some pretty choppy country roads on this launch drive here today, and I can tell you it has been picking up every little bump in the road and not settling as well as we'd like. It may be a smidge softer than a CX-90, and it's definitely something you can live with day to day, but the difference is, yeah, very, very small, and even a back-to-back drive may not show that up. As I said, you can live with it, and I think you can get used to it over time, but worth taking this for a long test drive on roads you know, with bumps that you know, before buying one of these, just to make sure it is a right fit for you. Another thing that's not so good with this car is the transmission. Now, it's an 8-speed gearbox, but it's not a conventional design. It's Mazda's own unit, and it's a multi-clutch design. It's hard to explain quite succinctly, but what you need to know is it's not a torque converter gearbox like a BMW, for example, or a dual clutch gearbox like a Volkswagen. However, unfortunately, it does show some of the not so good traits of either of those cars. So pulling up at a T-junction here, coming to a full stop, pulling away from the lights, and there is a bit, of hesitation off the mark, which is something you expect and come to know from dual clutch gearboxes that is present in this car. But at higher speeds though, when you, for example, accelerating and you pull a paddle, the car upshifts, it does start to slur its gear changes a little bit, which is okay, given this car is not meant to be a sports car, but still it does seem to have some of the not so good traits of both dual clutch and torque converter gearbox. It's not ideal and could do with a little bit more tuning work in a car like this. Mazda has improved this gearbox compared to its first use in the CX-60 about 18 months ago, but still a little bit more tuning could be good just to make this gearbox a little bit more refined. And the same goes for that ride as well. What else to say about this car? First is the brake pedal. Now, it isn't the most sensitive that we've tried in the world, at least not in this class in particular. It does require a bit of physical effort to pull the car up. Now, some drivers may like that. We're not such a huge fan, which was a little bit more sensitive, gives the car a bit more sense of urgency. Again, that's something you'll discover if you take this car on a test drive. In terms of noise isolation at higher speeds, it is pretty good, though we will notice there has been a rattle behind the dash of one of the cars we've driven. But in terms of tyre noise and wind noise, it is pretty well insulated in that regard. And visibility is really good, even though this is a really big car. Rear window is pretty big, great big side mirrors, as well as good vision out the front as well. Overall, the CX-70 is a nice car to drive. Those engines in particular are a highlight, though there are some places where Mazda could do a bit more work to make this car just that little bit better. There you go, the Mazda CX-70. This car is a really interesting proposition. Mazda admits this won't be a volume seller. It's not going to sell the same numbers as the 90, let alone the CX-60 or the CX-80. But if you want a car this big and you really don't need more than 5 seats, it is worth considering. And that price, about a 10 grand saving over a CX-90, if you're a buyer that figures you're not going to use that third row anyway and you just like the look and the feel and the proportions of this kind of car, this CX-70 definitely should have a place on your consideration list. But what do you think? Is this car a niche within a niche, or does it have a place in Mazda's sprawling SUV lineup? Let us know in the comments below. To read the full written review on this car, click the link in the description below. And to watch another video on another new Mazda SUV, click up there, watch our video review of the new Mazda CX-80.